I'm really not a fan of this country's state-run, corporate-owned media. And that's exactly what it is. It's state-run, it's corporate-owned. Instead of asking the really hard-hitting questions and doing real quality investigative journalism and actually reporting the news, it is all about sensationalism and that pathetically predictable pattern of behavior where sensationalism is used as a device to make money because, again, these are corporate owned media conglomerates, and taking that sensationalism and creating narratives to help drive certain agendas. And look, I don't care if it's conservative media, I don't care if it's moderate media or middle of the road media or liberal media, they all do it. So stop pretending your fucking media is better than the other side's, because it's not. They may sometimes take uh, different paths to get to where they're going, but just like the Democratic and Republican parties, they all ultimately arrive at the same point, anyways. You're all fucked, you're all screwed. And it's just that simple. So I can't say that I was at all surprised at the narrative driving by both the conservative and liberal media once the results of the 2016 presidential election started to roll in. I was flipping throughout the night and watching coverage on CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and CBS because I wanted to get an accurate picture of what all of the major media was saying. And I wanted to see what was going to be said and what was going to happen. And I don't care if it's the conservative or the liberal media at this point in time. So many of those narratives that were being driven home on election night still are being driven home are just based on bullshit in a land of fantasy and incredibly departed from the actual reality of what happened. And each side is ultimately using certain talking points to create a sensationalistic narrative to help drive an agenda. And that agenda for conservative media for the next 4 years is to try and legitimize Donald Trump and his presidency and the Republican Congress and everything they're about to cram down the country's throats. And then on the flip side, the liberal media is going to spend the next 4 years in kind of this stupor of shock as to how this was allowed to happen, to where they are going to do everything in their power possible to try and delegitimize Donald Trump and his presidency in the Republican Congress. It's that simple. That's what's going to happen. You could already see the foundation of this taking root on Tuesday night on election night, and it's still going on. It's, like I said, it's going to continue for the next 4 years. But what I really hope a lot of people get out of this video that actually watch this video and actually watch and listen to the entirety of the video before just rushing into defense mode or something is that you understand the importance of the next 4 years of tuning out that mainstream media and doing your own research and formulating your own opinions and your own facts. Not because fucking Rachel Maddow or Sean Hannity or Bill O'Reilly or Chris Matthews or whatever talking head pundit fuckface tells you about anything. Because it's going to be really, really important. This is going to be incredibly difficult to navigate through the bullshit, to find the truth, to find the reality over the next 4 years. If you thought it was bad under the past 8 years of an Obama administration, it's not going to get any better under a Trump administration. It is only going to get worse. But I've got to take the media to task for this BS, conservative and liberal alike, in terms of this false narrative setting and using that as a way to kind of drive their own narratives and their agendas for the next 4 years. I'll start with the conservative media, one of my favorite punching bags, but they're not going to be alone in this, that's for sure. First, I saw a lot of conservative media refer to this as a referendum on Barack Obama, and ultimately somewhat of a repudiation of Barack Obama's 8 years, which is ridiculous to me because Barack Obama consistently runs in the low 50% in terms of his 50% in terms of his approval rating, somewhere between, on average, 50 to 54% right now. And if anything, after this election cycle, that approval numbers are probably only going to go slightly higher. You know, it sounds great in theory because a Republican won after 8 years of Obama, but it's just not true. It's not a repudiation of Obama at all. It's not a referendum on Barack Obama at all, especially when you look at the fact that Trump got less than 50% of the popular vote. How in the hell is that a referendum? Because if you put that type of referendum on a local ballot and it got the numbers that Trump got, ultimately that referendum would be defeated. And Hillary won the popular vote. Only in America could the person who got more votes lose and the person who got less votes win because of the way the system is set up. So the conservative media could take that referendum on Barack Obama crap and shove it up their ass. Then there's all this talk about how the polls were wrong and there were all these hidden Trump voters. And maybe occasionally it could point to that, but that nowhere nearly tells an accurate picture of what actually happened on election day. And honestly, the polls weren't that wrong, as I discussed already in a previous video. The vast majority of the last minute polls in a lot of the toss-up battleground swing key states were within the margin of error. It's not the polls' fault in a lot of these cases that the media entities, the conservative media in this particular case, didn't disseminate the information that was provided to them. They chose to focus on one thing and then use that to drive home a different point. That just isn't factual. Sure, there were some polls that were off, way off, but that's going to happen. But the vast majority of them, at least 75% of them, were within the margin of error. Look, again, if Hillary Clinton is projected in a poll to win by 2%, but the margin of error is 3%, that could mean, like happened in Florida, let's say, Trump wins by 1%, the poll is technically right, it is within the margin of error. And I've talked about in another video, you want a better explanation of that, you go watch it there. But all this talk about hidden Trump voters and all of this other crap is just bullshit. Just like how working class whites in rural and suburban America want it for Trump. And nowhere nearly tells a complete and accurate picture. If anything, a more accurate picture is how the Obama coalition frayed significantly under Hillary Clinton. She got lower support from the black vote. She got lower support from Hispanic and Latino voters, all the while their turnout numbers upticked slightly from 2012, and Donald Trump actually got a little bit more support from them than Mitt Romney did 4 years earlier. And then the millennial youth vote, the under 30 vote, didn't break nearly as hard for Hillary as it did for Obama 4 years before. And women didn't break for freaking Hillary Clinton nearly as much as you might have thought some woman would have, just for the fact that they had a chance to break through that glass ceiling and a woman could have actually been president of the United States. So you keep talking about all that working class white male bullshit, but it's just a false narrative to set. Because if Hillary draws better support out of the black, Hispanic, and millennial crowd, she potentially still wins this election. And she already won the popular vote anyways, even with the diminishing support in those areas. She just, based off of the way the stupid system is set up, she didn't win the state she was needing to win in order to get to the 270 total of electoral college votes. There's all this talk in the conservative media talking about how Trump won in spite of liberal media bias. I say bullshit. Trump won in part because of the liberal media bias and the media's bias in general towards always talking about this guy. Think about how much his name, his face, his message got out there for free. Because of the conservative and liberal and moderate media, everybody talking about this guy 24/7, 365. To sit there and say he won in spite of the liberal media bias. If anything, if you want to talk about the liberal media was always shitting on him and trashing him and all this other crap, it's kind of one of those things. The only bad press is no press at all. Bad press can be phenomenal press. And if anything, it can be used as a rallying point. And clearly it was a rallying point for Donald Trump and his supporters. So you might want to use it, to advance a certain narrative, to put forth a certain agenda. But the fact is, without some of that liberal media bias that you refer to, and it really in the larger scheme of things was just generally a media bias towards Donald Trump, Trump doesn't win this election because he got so much free press out of it. And then all the other good one is that the Democratic Party is in big trouble. They're in such big trouble because Trump won. Now they also have control of both houses of Congress. And you know, it sounds great in theory, but the fact of the matter is, again, Trump got less than 50% of the popular vote. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Barack Obama's approval rating is over 50% consistently. And when you look at the Democratic Party right now, you know, now they can sit back and say, hey, we're not in charge of anything. So if anything goes wrong at all in 2018 and 2020, you got the midterms in 2 years, you got the next presidential election in 4 years, the Democratic Party could be positioned to strike big time. And as far as this thing of, you know, well, the voters rejected the progressive liberal agenda of Hillary Clinton. Number one, it was Hillary Clinton. She was a shitty, shitty candidate, and everybody knows it. Can't tell you how many women I talked to that told me they can't believe they were going to say this, but they weren't voting for Trump. But at the end of the day, there's a woman on the ticket that could actually be president, and they can't bring themselves to vote for her. So that speaks to how shitty Hillary Clinton was as a candidate. But furthermore, the majority of Americans support many platforms that progressives and liberals do, such as taxing the rich more, health care for all. You know, these are not recreational marijuana being legal, just to name a few. So when you get past the labels and when you actually talk about the specific issues, that's just a conservative talking point that's not based in freaking reality, as is so often the case with conservative media. It's not based on reality. But again, that's enough picking on the conservative media, because the liberal, moderate media, holy shit, they've said some freaking whoppers about the election too. Most specifically, Van Jones. I'll start with him. And as the night of the election happened and the results were coming in, I tweeted a thing or two talking about the angry white man struck back. But that was much of a joke as anything else. Ultimately, at the end of the day, before I made my final judgment, I wanted to make sure that I actually saw the numbers and saw the demographics and saw where the votes were coming from and how they were breaking. But for him to sit there and say this was a white lash against a Barack Obama black man presidency the past 8 years is just complete and utter race baiting bullshit. And believe me, I talk about race plenty, and many of you know that I do. And some of you accuse me of being an SJW and being a cuck for the black man and all this other bullshit. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to let bullshit like this pass by, because it takes away from more legitimate instances where race does play an issue. If the white man hated Obama so much, why in the fuck did they reelect him in 2012? It sounds great for you to say it, Van Jones, and I'm sure a lot of people that were disparate over the fact that Donald Trump actually won the fucking presidency wanted to agree with you because it fit into a certain pretty narrative, but it's bullshit. Barack Obama's approval ratings are over 50%. Let's not talk about the fact that the shitty candidate that was Hillary Clinton got less black support than Barack Obama, less Hispanic Latino support than Barack Obama. And all the while, they actually supported Donald Trump more than they did Mitt Romney 4 years earlier. So you have to ask yourself, how horrible was Hillary fucking Clinton when of all the groups, outside of maybe Muslims, the one that had the most to fear of a Donald Trump presidency were Hispanic and Latino voters, and they voted more for him than they did for Mitt Romney. The young voters didn't flock to Hillary in the same numbers. Female voters didn't turn out nearly like you would have thought maybe they should have, with a woman so close to cracking through the glass ceiling. If anything, you could talk about how sexism is still a bigger issue than it's given credit for, and sometimes can be on par with racism. Because some of the results of the election, if anything, would bear that out to be true. Because frankly, a lot of males might not be that comfortable with the female president, because I've talked about it before, that nagging wife syndrome, the nagging wife barrier. You know, a lot of husbands, frankly, don't like their wives very much half the goddamn time. And they sit there and have their wives bitch at them and nag at them and moan on them or every fucking thing. Do they really want to sit there and look at their president and see basically their wife nagging about him on international affairs and domestic issues? No. So if anything, you could talk about that. That would potentially be a more relevant, appropriate talking point than you as a black man sitting there talking about this was a white lash against Barack Obama. What the fuck are you talking about? Because if Hillary Clinton performed better with the Obama coalition and didn't run such a sloppy, arrogant, reckless fucking campaign, she would have won the presidency. And even then, what type of white lash? She lost due to the quirks of the system. She still won the popular vote. That makes no fucking sense, and it's idiotic for him to say it. Some Democrats in particular and liberals are going to blame third parties and talk about that. You know what? At the end of the day, Barack Obama had Gary Johnson and Jill Stein and other third party candidates on the ballot in 2012, and he managed to win over 300 electoral votes. He managed to sit there and win the popular vote by over 5 million. You could sit there and point to maybe Gary Johnson took some support away from Hillary Clinton, or maybe Hillary Clinton took that support away from Hillary Clinton by having a shitty message and her history of baggage and scandal and her lack of integrity and just being an inherently unlikable individual. Yeah, but let's blame Gary Johnson and Jill Stein for that bullshit. Oh, and then of course you got the James Comey FBI crap. You know, here's the thing. You could really question the political motivations of him releasing what he did late in the election. But at the end of the day, number one, if Hillary doesn't fucking do it, it's not an issue to begin with. Number two, the people that already hated Hillary, this just gave them more ammunition to hate her. But it's not like they were going to hate her a whole lot more than they already do. And the people that like her, with all the other scandal and baggage and bullshit, you really think this was going to be the straw that broke the camel's back? Give me a fucking break. Political motivations of James Comey are not be damned. At the end of the day, sitting there and blaming the FBI and the email bullshit is just that, a bunch of bullshit, especially when you talk about the fucking Clinton baggage of the past 30 plus fucking years. You got this bitch talking about how she loves the working class, but she worked as a corporate lawyer for Walmart in the 80s and sat on their board, I believe, at one point in time. Somebody who talks about how she wants to bring American jobs, but she sits there and supports NAFTA and initially supported TPP and other free trade agreements that are nothing more than opportunities and avenues to let American jobs leave the country. Well, it's the same fucking thing as Donald Trump did in his own business. But I digress nonetheless. Democrats, liberals, progressives, stop blaming James Comey and the fucking FBI. Blame your candidate, period. Then you get the whole thing of Bernie would have won. And yeah, I quipped it once too on election night. Again, kind of being a jerk and a jackass. Well, Bernie would have won. And people want to talk about the fact, well, you know, when you look at the primary season, you know, Hillary lost in states that Bernie won, like Wisconsin and Michigan. Okay. If I remember correctly, back in 2008, Hillary beat Barack in Pennsylvania. Barack Obama carried Pennsylvania in 2008 and 2012. Hillary Clinton beat Barack Obama in New Hampshire in 2008, and he managed to carry that state both in 2008 and 2012. So that's a shitty fucking logic. If anything, and we want to get on the whole Bernie Sanders bullshit here for a second, even if he wins Wisconsin and Michigan and Hillary doesn't, is he guaranteed to necessarily win Pennsylvania? Not necessarily. He still would have lost the fucking election. Furthermore, if Bernie Sanders was such a great fucking candidate, then why the fuck didn't he beat Hillary Clinton when he was the only other alternative or option? So many people don't like Hillary Clinton, including Democrats, yet he couldn't beat her when he had his opportunity. So he was going to beat Donald fucking Trump? Give me a fucking break. And on top of that, surely there were plenty of Bernie supporters that weren't feeling the burn for Hillary Clinton. What happened if some of the Hillary supporters, and there are still some ardent, adamant Hillary supporters in the Democratic establishment, what if they didn't feel the burn and they didn't show up for Bernie Sanders? Then what the fuck difference does it make? Bernie would have lost too. And then you get to the whole thing of the hidden Trump voters. And again, just like the conservative media, talk about how the polls were wrong. Again, a lot of the polls in the days leading up to the election were within the margin of error. Many of them were not wrong at all. You know, if you're going to sit there and talk about hidden Trump voters, I look at the fact that he didn't win the popular vote. He got less than 50% of the popular vote. And I say if there are hidden Trump voters, many of them are still hiding. Maybe we should tell them hide and seek is over. Election over. They can appear now. You know, this is just kind of that thing of, as humans, the thing that we struggle the most with sometimes is taking accountability for and responsibility for our actions and our behaviors. You can sit there and blame it on hidden Trump voters if you want, even though that wasn't nearly as big of a problem as people made it out to be for the Democrats, and not nearly as big of a boon to Trump's success as the conservative media and Republicans wanted to make it out to be. How about at the end of the day, the liberal and moderate media blame the candidate in the shitty campaign that she ran? Think about it. There was finally a woman on the ticket to potentially be the next president of the United States with as much name recognition as anybody in this country. And she couldn't beat a misogynistic, sexist, racist pig. Think about that. Only Hillary Clinton, in all of her ineptitude and suckage, could manage to fucking pull that off. You could blame the hidden Trump voters all you want, but apparently she was so bad that people did not want to vote for her like they did Obama in 2008 and 2012. If anything, it is striking that more people supported a black man than they did a white woman. Again, which lends earlier credence to maybe we need to have a bigger discussion about sexism in this country, especially with some of the things that Donald Trump said. But at the end of the day, if Hillary Clinton wasn't Hillary Clinton, and she was a better candidate, a cleaner candidate, a more honest and trustworthy candidate, a more likable candidate, she would have not only beat Donald Trump, she would have creamed Donald Trump. Stop sitting there and trying to find justifications. Look in the mirror and say, how the fuck did we allow Wasserman Schultz and the DNC and Donna Brazil to sit there and rig this shit like this? This is ridiculous. It gave you Hillary Clinton. Accept it. That's why you fucking lost. A horrible candidate and a shitty, arrogant, reckless campaign. Donald Trump had nothing to do with it. His voters had nothing to do with it because many of them were looking to not vote for Donald Trump, and many of them still are in hiding because they ultimately didn't vote for Donald Trump. They just didn't want to vote for Hillary Clinton because she sucks, period. It's that simple. I'm tired of the media BS, and I'm tired of when people try to sit there and spin these narratives and these lies and these agendas towards me because I'm not buying it. And like I said, if nothing else, I really hope, for the sake of all of you, over the next 4 years, you really take your time, you pay attention, but at the same time, you don't just automatically believe the first thing you freaking hear. Understand the source, understand where they could be coming from, understand what narrative they're trying to set, understand what their agenda could be. Do your own research. Come up with your own opinions. Please, I implore you, because it is going to be more important than ever the next 4 years to do just that. As I just told you, on election night, all aspects of the media are feeding you a bunch of bullshit. And please don't take to the comments section trying to defend your media or blast the other media. Because even if they take divergent paths, they are all ending up at the same destination, a big box of bullshit, period.